All right. So what did the poll turn out to be? I asked, did Trent's arguments show that Christians and Muslims worship the same God? We played his arguments. Now, there's more to the debate, so he, I'm sure, defends those arguments and so on. But as far as his opening statement, 86% of people said no. His arguments don't show that Christians and Muslims worship the same God.
That's very rude, man.
It's very rude, and I say possibly racist. I'm going to end that poll. I'm going to end that poll. Then we're going to check out the next one. By the way, IP, you don't go as late as me and AP do, so just let me know when you need to cut out and go get your beauty rest.
Oh, I need to eat. It's not that I need beauty rest. I need to eat dinner because over here it's only 6:53 p.m. I've not eaten dinner yet, so probably in a little bit I'll just start getting hungry and cranky. And you don't want me on here when I'm cranky.
Just eat a Snickers, man. You're not yourself. Hey, we should do some. What?
I was gonna say that just made me think. Like, maybe that's the problem. Muhammad's God didn't eat a Snickers, and that's his problem. That's why he's not the God of the Bible.
Hey, you should have a thing where you're like throwing this big tantrum about Christmas being pagan and stuff like that, and you're like enraged, and someone says, "Hey, man, come on, you're not yourself," and hands you a Snickers, and then all of a sudden you're like Wes Huff or something like that. I don't know, someone's super nice. Okay, guys, so we had Trent's opening statement, and now they're going one side. It's going to be the other Catholic guy right now, right?
Yeah, it'll be the Catholic guy.
Okay. Okay, so it's both and then both. Okay, all right.
We do disagree. Therefore, we must be talking about the same thing. Next slide. So this is actually the biggest slide. Like, so what if we're talking about the same God? Absolutely nothing follows from that. Absolutely nothing follows from that, because the distinctive between Christianity and Islam isn't there are differences with respect to the doctrine of God, but it's Jesus Christ and his saving power and his acts, his virgin birth, sinless life, atoning.
I'm playing this again because look, he has to clarify. You have to add all this clarification that, hey, when I say worshiping the same God, I'm not saying that we're describing God the same way and that the doctrines of the Trinity and the Incarnation are not important and that we don't have to evangelize them and so on. Burn in your face, and do you want to fight?
Yes. Powerful resurrection. That's what sets Christianity apart from Islam. And so there's just no negative consequences that follow. Absolutely zero soteriological consequences follow from the affirmative to the question that Jews and Christians and Muslims worship the same God.
So there you also have your answer to this whole speculation, and he clearly says that even if we agree that Muslims worship the same God, we still completely affirm that they need Jesus Christ and that we need to evangelize to them. So that's the position.
Mm-hmm. Let's move now to Dr. Christopher.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
If you had more slides, I was wondering, would it be more beneficial if you had more time and then we also had a little more time?
I think that's the last one. I think that's the last slide. Okay, are there other slides? Yep, there we go.
Confusion. The Islamic and Christian conceptions of God are super different. A, no, they're not. It depends on what you mean by super different. B, so Lois Lane's conceptions of Clark Kent and Superman really are super different essential properties, yet both Clark Kent and Superman refer to Kal-El. So that's the point some other people were making. Hey, if you can be wrong about something and still be talking about the same thing. So that's actually a good example. I made the same point when we were talking on Sunday with Anthony here, and I was pointing at, I used Mark Twain as an example just because that's the one I remember from philosophy. If you talk about Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens, they're the same person. You could, in theory, like suppose Samuel Clemens is your neighbor. As a matter of fact, suppose he writes you a note one day and it's like the worst written note you've ever seen in your life. You'd say, my neighbor Samuel Clemens is a terrible writer. You'd be wrong because he's Mark Twain. His pen name's Mark Twain, and he's possibly the best American writer that we've had. But he's a very good writer. So anyway, you could describe someone completely wrongly and incorrectly and be talking about the same person. What were you saying?
Yeah, I don't know if this analogy works because we know from reality, like both
That's
from,
the point.
from the story, Clark Kent and Superman, there are no contradictions. They necessarily are the same person. So there's no contradictions between the characters. It's the circumstances that make it appear there are differences. That's not the same with the God of Islam and the God of Christianity. There are definite contradictions that they cannot just jive and be the same, different aspects of one God or something like that. Like this whole thing assumes that, like, this whole analogy assumes that, like, both Clark Kent and Superman, like Lois Lane is actually seeing real qualities, real things about this person two different ways. What we're saying, though, is that there are clear contradictions, and what Islam is getting, even the Catholics are saying this, Islam is getting a lot of things about God completely wrong. Lois Lane is not getting anything wrong about Clark Kent or Superman. She's just seeing two aspects of the same person. So again, I don't think this analogy really works.
Yeah, the issue here is, one, you have what something actually is, and then you have whatever something is, that's what it is. And then you have beliefs or claims about that thing. People's beliefs or claims can be wrong, even if they're talking about that thing. So anyway, as IP pointed out, if Lois Lane is talking about Clark Kent, and then you say, and Lois Lane thinks that Clark Kent can't fly, isn't strong, doesn't have heat vision or whatever, you'd say, well, she's wrong, but that's because we know the story and we know that Clark Kent is Superman. You can't say that's like God in Islam and Christianity without begging the question, because that's what we're talking about. Are we talking about the same person and someone's wrong, or are we talking about two different beings? Anyway, now we've got... Cameron just called him Dr. Christopher. He called him Dr. Christopher because his last name is Tomaszewski. It looks like Thomas Zewski, but Ed Komaszewski is spelled the ending is spelled the same, and that's Komaszewski. So I think it's Komaszewski. Cameron, Dr. Christopher Tomaszewski. What?
I'm just going to say one thing, which is that because we know how the Islamic conception of God came into existence, and how the Islamic religion came into existence, you and I can agree that Muslims don't worship the same God, because they don't even they didn't even start from the same starting point. So their God necessarily relies on the very corrupt foundation, the non-Abrahamic foundation that it started out of. If Muslims at some point openly declared, or if Islam fundamentally at some point openly declared, okay, we did start out from a wrong point, and therefore we adopted these things. However, we now abandon those things, and we now worship the God of Abraham, but then still got it wrong. I would then say, okay, they do worship the same God in some way. But in this state as it is, it's just there is no way.
The issue here is so again, you kind of this example. No, matter of fact. If he's using this as a response to the obvious objection, hey, we're describing God differently, therefore we're talking about two different gods. If he's using that as a response to that, it's a good response. No, that doesn't show that you're talking about two different beings. You could Lois Lane could describe Clark Kent completely differently from Superman, even in contradictory ways, and still be talking about the same person. She just doesn't realize it. That would be a response to that point. But again, you can't use this to actually show that the God of Islam and the God of Christianity are the same God, or that Christians and Muslims are worshiping the same God. Because think, again, that would be begging the question, why? Imagine you said, hey, I just saw a very powerful being from Krypton. He has superhuman strength, he can fly, and so on. And he's wearing blue, and he's got this S-looking thing on his chest and so on, and a big red cape. And another guy says, I know this really strong being from Krypton, and he's flying around, and he's got superhuman strength and laser vision and stuff. Wow. But he's dressed, he's saying that he was a military general, and he's really mad, and he wants to... If you kept going through the details, eventually you'd say, wait a minute, you're both talking about really powerful beings, and they're both from Krypton and so on, but it can become clear, one of you is talking about General Zod, one of you is talking about Superman. They're different beings. They share a lot of things in common, but they're different.
This feels like a nerd session, man. Like, what is this example?
He brought up the Superman thing, man. And if you don't know General Zod, then you just got problems, man.
Clark Kent.
All right.
This is actually a reply slide, a pre-reply.
Okay.
So no, that was it. The whole
And again, I agree with this point as a reply. It is a good response as a reply. It just some people. I don't think Trent is doing this, but some people use it as their argument, and it doesn't work as an argument.
5 minutes. Take it away, Tomaszewski, Dr. Tomaszewski.
Yeah, go ahead and start sharing your screen. I'll pull it up whenever you're ready.
Do you want me to share it?
Yeah, share your screen.
Got it.
Come on, man, share your screen. What's up?
You what I have here?
Oh, Cameron to see. What's up, Cameron?
There we go. All right, it's up
he
and
has
ready.
fancy-
So whenever you start, I'll start my time.
He has fancier stuff. Christians and Muslims obviously, keep in mind, he's saying, obviously worship the same God. I don't know. What was it, like 88% who said, no, that was just claiming that Trent's argument didn't prove that. So, but I think you'd get, I think most Christians who actually know something about Islam, if you ask them, I don't have any actual statistics. I think most Christians would say, no, we're talking about same God, but I don't know that. I don't know that for a fact.
And yeah, feel free to begin.
Okay. Right. So I guess I agree
In other words, I would object to obviously here.
with Trent, right, that this isn't actually a hard question. Christians and Muslims obviously worship the same God, and there's no good theory of linguistic reference or intentionality according to which they do not. As
Oh my
Trent,
goodness! Can your font get any?
alluded
What do you
to
got? A
as well,
one
I
font
want
there?
to try to qualify immediately here by noting what I'm not saying. I am not saying that there's any grace or salvation in the Islamic religion whatsoever. I'm not saying that any Muslims whatsoever are saved. Everything I'm
Guys, get the point? Because we keep mentioning this, but you have to pack all this clarification. It's like you understand that in saying Christians and Muslims worship the same God, it's like you understand that is going to be seriously misleading. So you have to explain what you're saying and what you're not saying. So I don't know. It's like you're saying, you guys obviously understand that when you say Christians and Muslims worship the same God, people are going to draw all sorts of conclusions about that, and some bad conclusions, some seriously bad conclusions, which is why you guys have to add so much clarification every time you say it.
Well, to be fair, you know what Osho said, right?
Oh yeah.
He said, but the people.
consistent with the thesis that every Muslim who has ever lived is in hell. I'm not saying that there are any good reasons to be Muslim whatsoever. I'm not saying that anybody could be saved without explicit divine faith in both the doctrines of the Trinity and the Incarnation. I don't think they can, as a good Thomist. I'm not saying that Christianity and Islam are merely distinct revealed extrapolations of some near philosophical monotheism established by natural theology. I'm not even sure what that claim amounts to. I've seen it going around. I totally reject it. I am also not saying that all monotheists worship the true God, right? So this isn't just a claim about all monotheists. I think there's something special about Islam, as with Judaism, that makes it the case that they worship the same God as Christians.
I got a problem with that, at least as far as Trent's arguments. Again, I think you could run Trent's exact same argument and use it in a polytheistic polytheistic context and say, hey, I believe in 50 gods, but this God is the God of Abraham, and we worship this God, and therefore we worship the same God because it's the God of Abraham. I think you could run the exact same argument. So I don't even know why you'd be insisting on monotheism.
I don't think, for example, Mormons worship the same God as Christians. Okay.
Wait, what?
Wait,
What did he just say?
Yeah.
What
Holy
the
crap.
heck? Wait.
Whoa, dude. Hang on. We all see a problem there, right? Namely,
Yeah.
so his argument just undermined Trent's argument, because Trent's argument was, hey, when you're where a term comes from, where does it, what's the context in which this term arises? Well, Joseph Smith is drawing his terminology about God and Jesus from the surrounding Christian context, and therefore he would have to be saying this. He would have to be talking about the same God and the same Jesus, even if he's saying things that are wrong. That's Trent's argument. I don't know if he's going to be arguing something different here, but if you say Mormons worship a different God, I have zero clue how you would say Muslims don't worship a.
Yeah,
this completely undermines Trent's point here. So
yeah. It just seems like there's now a double standard going on.
In your face, Trent! You just got wrecked by Christopher Tomaszewski. No, Tomaszewski.
I thought they would have said Mormons do worship the same God as Christians. I thought that's what they were going to say.
I don't understand what they're saying at this point. Because again, I said you could run Trent's exact same argument even if you're talking about polytheism and stuff. So. Yeah, as far as their argument that they're using, how a word comes to refer to something and so on, and theories of reference, I don't see how you would conclude that Mormons have a different God.
That's the thing. Like, I was being as charitable as possible and acknowledging that I guess I can understand that in some sense you could say Muslims worship the same God. While I don't agree with the conclusion, I understand where they're coming from, and you could say it in some sense. But in that sense, you would also have to apply that to Mormons. How do you not?
Yeah.
I don't even get it.
No, it doesn't make sense now. Now I'm completely thrown off. I don't even know what to think anymore.
I am seriously confused. I wish I could read all of his points. I wonder if I can actually pull it up in the original. We'll have this on the screen, but if I need to read anything, I can read it. All right, let's go.
How can you possibly clarify that? There are some people who are saying, well, but no, it's because Mormons believe in infinite gods, many gods. I don't care.
So maybe you could let me...
Is one of those the God of Abraham?
Yeah.
Do Mormons believe in the God of Abraham? If yes... Exactly. Then they're referring to the same God. And if they're wrong, you say they're wrong about everything. They're wrong in their descriptions and they're wrong about all these other gods, but they're talking about the same God of Abraham. I don't know how you avoid that given what these guys said.
Yeah. So like, I think what they're trying to say is like the Mormons are just technically kind of atheists in a lot of their beliefs. They don't believe in an infinite, eternal creator like Christians and Muslims do. They believe that God, our God, was a guy on a planet, and he got appointed to godhood, and then he gets his own planet, and then we're going to get like that kind of things if you're a faithful Mormon. And there's just an infinite chain of gods going back, and it's all just people on planets. They all had a beginning. So I guess you could say there's a huge ontological difference. But on the other side, if you're going to bring in those ontological differences between the God of Mormonism and the God of Christianity, you got to do the same with the God of Islam, who's not a Trinity, who's got two right arms, who's got two right hands and a shin. And I mean, like, there's all sorts of ontological issues that are now going to come up. So yeah, this is a double standard ultimately.
And also the historical difference, the reference, the starting point difference. Remember the first argument that Trent made, which is that that if it originates within the context of furthering the biblical narrative, for example, we can establish that this is not how Islam originated. We can, however, completely establish that not only did Mormonism originate with, picking up and restoring and furthering the biblical narrative? It also directly grew out from a Christian environment and a Christian culture. So if you want to say that one of these worships the same God, and you have to pick one, it would have to be Mormonism, not Islam. I don't even get it.
Yeah. Because even Mormons conclude the Bible is like scripture, like they use the King James. I mean, it's this creates all sorts of new issues that I didn't even think about.
I'm wondering how much Dr. Tomaszewski knows about Islam, because it's one thing if he understands all the weird stuff.
They both don't know anything about Islam.
Okay, because that's a possibility. So it's a situation where if they knew the details, they wouldn't be like, oh yeah, Mormons not same God, Muslims yes same God. Because I mean, just think about it. If you hear about Islam and you hear how Islam is portrayed, it's just we worship the one true God and so on. You think, oh okay, well that's good. When you get into the details, pretty weird, creepy stuff. But let's see what he's arguing here.
I don't think, for example, Mormons worship the same God as Christians. Okay.
It's got a one font here. one font. I actually pulled it up here so I can read stuff. Oh, okay. So this slide is about. He's going to explain it, but this slide is more examples of how people can describe something differently and yet be talking about the same thing, or describe something that they don't know about or don't fully know about and be talking about the same thing.
Just a little bit of a quick primer on common sense about reference and intentional action, right? We use words to refer to objects in the external world all the time, and we do so even under circumstances in which we know very, very, very little about the external object in question. For example, Jack the Ripper refers to a serial killer responsible for a series of murders in the Whitechapel area of London in 1888. It doesn't matter who you think Jack the Ripper is, how tall he was, whether he had facial hair, how he committed the murders. You could get all kinds of things wrong about him. Nevertheless, the term Jack the Ripper.
What?
I like this guy now. He talks about serial killers. My favorite topic.
Oh, I was thinking I thought you were talking about Jack the Ripper. You like Jack the Ripper. I was like, gosh, it's messed up. Yeah, so guys, get the point.
I'm more of a Jeffrey Dahmer kind of.
Yeah. Well, who isn't? So, guys, there are all kinds of theories about the identity of Jack the Ripper. Like, there are actual suspects. People believe, oh, I believe it was this guy who traveled to the UK during this time, and so on. They actually think this. Like they say, it was this guy. This was Jack the Ripper, and so on. Well, guess what? You could be completely wrong about the identity, or you could just have no clue what the identity is, and yet everyone could be talking about the same Jack the Ripper. They know who Jack the Ripper is, the guy who did all these killings.
Succeeds in referring to him, whoever he is. The largest pair of twin primes refers to the largest primes of the form p and p plus 2, if there is any such largest pair. Nobody even knows if there's such a largest pair, but if there is, it still succeeds in referring, the term the largest pair of twin primes succeeds in referring to that pair.
So a twin prime is where you have a prime number, and then like two more is another prime number, like 3 is prime and 5 is prime. And so those are twin primes. And people just don't know if there are infinitely many twin primes. It just like goes on, like it never ends, or if there's some highest twin prime, and that's where there are no more twin primes after that. Guess what? You could still talk about twin primes, even though people don't know. At least no one, as far as I know, has come up with a proof one way or the other. But it's unknown. You still understand what a twin prime is, and you could say there is a high. One person could say there are an infinite number of twin primes. Another person could say no, there's a highest twin prime, and therefore there's a finite number. Someone could be wrong, and yet we all understand what a twin prime is.
And finally, Jesus of Nazareth, right, refers to a first century Jewish preacher born to the Virgin Mary in the Roman province of Judea. It doesn't matter if you think he's God or not. It doesn't matter.
You see, Catholics say it doesn't matter if you think Jesus is God.
How many of the narratives in the gospel you think are true of him, so on and so forth. It succeeds. So what follows? That it's fairly easy to refer to things, including to God, even if you get a lot of things wrong about the object of your reference, and even if you get a lot of things wrong specifically about God, including whether God subsists in 3 distinct hypostases or whether Jesus of Nazareth is one of those hypostases. And so it's easy to refer to the true God. It's also fairly easy to worship the true God because worship is an intentional action like reference. There's no good reason to think that having the correct intentional object for worship is any harder than having the correct intentional object for reference.
So there he's saying it's easy to refer to something like God, and he sees no reason to think that worshiping something, as far as what your intention is, he doesn't see any reason to think that it would be more difficult to worship something, even if you're wrong about it, than it would be to refer to something, even if you're wrong about it.
Notably, though, and here's another thing I'm not saying it's fairly easy to worship the true God worthily. Or validly, to use Gavin Ortland's term. I think a sufficient condition on reference to and worship of the true God would be referring to and worshiping the unique, transcendent, immaterial, personal entity who created all things, all that exist apart from himself, ex nihilo. Classical Muslims affirm this description of God, so they succeed in referring.
Not even sure about that.
This is the most boring thing I've seen in my entire life.
No, so he says a sufficient condition on reference to and worship of the true God, referring to and worshiping the unique, transcendent, immaterial, personal entity who created all that exists apart from himself, ex nihilo. It's not clear that Allah creates all that exists from himself, ex nihilo. There are some things that apparently just always exist there. And immaterial, I don't know. Allah has actual literal body parts.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so
the uncreated foot of Allah.
Well, I mean, think of it like this, though. If he thinks the Mormons don't worship the same God, and one of his reasons would be because he is a physical man who became a god, would he also have to reject Muslims for the same reasons, because their God has physical body parts similar to the God of Mormonism? Like,
this is the funny thing. There are some people in the chat who said, "Well, obviously Mormons can't be seen in the same way, because Mormons, they don't worship the God. They worship different gods. They worship endless gods. They worship infinite." Dude, it doesn't matter. It absolutely does not matter. The way that Trent Doherty just qualified it and came to the conclusion that Muslims worship the same God that Christians worship, you would also have to argue that Mormons worship the same God, because why? They're talking about the same God that they ultimately claim to worship. They just have disagreements about this one God, right? This is argument number 2, and argument number 1 completely applies to Mormons, not to Muslims. So Mormons absolutely do claim to worship the God of Abraham. And even more so than Muslims and even Jews in the same way. Yeah. So there is, if you're going to say, "Oh yeah, Muslims totally do worship the same God, even if we disagree with him," but Mormons don't worship the same God because they have different views of him, you are contradicting yourself.
Yeah, here's my issue with this, and it sucks that it's hard to see on the screen because the font is small. But
that's my other issue. What? Why couldn't he make the font smaller? This is like too big, man. What is this?
Yeah, it would be funny. It would be funny that should be a debate trick. You like everything is so small, no one can read it. And you're like, and here's all my proof right here, which I'm not even going to go into, but I've decisively refuted my opponent's point. That'd be awesome. So here's the issue. Following Trent's argument, if we go with Trent's argument, it would be, like, I think, indisputable that you would say Mormons and Christians worship the same God from Trent's argument. As far as Christopher's argument here, I'm looking at, he's saying, hey, a sufficient condition on reference to and worship of the true God is referring and worshiping the unique, transcendent, immaterial, personal entity who created all that exists apart from himself, ex nihilo. And I think what he's saying is this is sufficient to say you're talking about the same God, but Mormons don't believe that about God, and therefore Mormons aren't worshiping this God. Muslims do believe this, and therefore they're worshiping the same God because they're meeting this sort of core, these core requirements. The issue there is, how's it not kind of arbitrary what you're listing as the core requirements of talking about the same God? Why not put triune there? Why not add triune in there? You could toss triune in there. Yeah. So one, we already pointed out, we're not, put it this way, definitely not all Muslims would meet that requirement. Some Muslims would meet that requirement. There are other Muslims who, their entire sects of Islam would have problems with this definition. Right. But suppose all Muslims adhered to this. Well, what if Muslims just said all powerful? You say, a sufficient condition for saying that we worship the same God is you believe that God is all powerful. Okay, well, I believe God is all powerful. They believe God is all powerful. Therefore, we're talking about the same God. You can put anything you want on your list. So why are you listing just the things that you think line up with Islam and not the things that make a difference when you could easily put very important features of God and put those on the list and say, therefore, Muslims aren't. So anyway, my point here is you just made the entire thing arbitrary. What are you going to put on your list of sufficient conditions to say that you are talking about the same God? if you put, so you're saying these, and if we go ahead and grant that Muslims believe this, then you'd say, okay, Muslims are worshiping the same God, but Mormons aren't, so they're excluded. Okay, why don't you put some things that Christians, Muslims, and Mormons all agree on, and therefore all worshiping the same God? If you could just say it, if all you have to do is list it, and so you could do that. You could put requirements that include, that would make Mormons worship that would make us say that Mormons worship the same God. All you have to do is put some different things on there. Or you could add to that list even very important characteristics of God or features of God according to Christianity that would mean that Muslims don't worship the same God. So, yeah, I see some problems here. But let's go ahead and let him finish.
Doing it, therefore, and worshiping him. It doesn't take more than that. It's just really easy, right? Moreover, we have a number of theological affirmations that this is the case from Paul in Acts 17:23 through 25, where he says, right, that he preaches to the Athenians the unknown God that they worship. Okay, we have an affirmation from Gregory Palamas himself telling.
Well, hold on. With Acts,
what's that?
With Acts, I sort of addressed that again. The difference is with Acts, it says that you worship the unknown God. You don't know anything about this God. I'm going to tell you who he really is. Muslims present a God who is contradictory to what we see in the scriptures, to what we see in Christian doctrine. Mormons do the same thing. That is why we could say they are not worshiping the same God as we do. If someone comes to you and says, I worship the unknown creator, no one knows who he is vast, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's Jesus. Let me tell you more about him. Because I'm not going to if I start teaching him about Jesus, about the triune God, he's going to learn all this new stuff about God that is not going to contradict what he already believed when he was worshiping this unknown creator. When you do the Muslims, they're going to be like, no, you're saying things that already contradict what we believe about God. And so that's where the problem happens. That's why Acts 17 doesn't work.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I don't think you can prove what he's saying from Acts 17.
Orthodox believers, right, to watch not to suffer anything like these ill-minded Muslims, not in regard to their reverence of God, obviously affirming here that they do indeed reverence God. And finally, from the living Patriarch of Moscow, I know we have here Muslims and Christians. Everyone is inquiring to the same God, a creator, and in answer to that, we are getting God's real help. So even contemporary Eastern Orthodox patriarchs believe.
Hey, he's quoting Orthodox guys?
Yeah, to say, look, even your patriarchs believe the same thing.
Wait. Because this is weird, because everyone's been flipping out on Jay because apparently he quoted a bunch of Catholic stuff to argue that, to say, hey, your own sources say that Christians and Muslims don't worship the same God. And then people said, oh, that's lame. But anyways, Christopher doing the same thing here, but just in reverse.